Greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I am Steve Deace, safely ensconced away from the still wasp-infested studios where Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre reside because they're frankly tougher than me. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. Maybe you've kind of picked up on the fact we just can't, maybe we can't trust public health as much as we thought. Or maybe you've got a loved one who hasn't picked up on that yet. Then they really need a Jace case, and you've got to be there for them. All right, you've got to be a proxy for their cerebellum, because it's clearly not firing on all synapses. They haven't been paying attention in the last few years, but you have been. And that's why you want to get the Jace case from Jace Medical. Stock up on the next round of venerable medications they're going to tell you are dangerous and you can't have right when you need them. So they can give you stuff like remdesivir instead. All right, you can do the basic one with the venerable antibiotics like amoxicillin and doxycycline. You can expand it to customize it to the medicines that you want to make sure you or that loved one who's not thinking for themselves yet can have, just in case that could never happen here, happens here again and again and again. Go to jace.com, J-A-S-E, jace.com. That's where you can go to get your Jace case. Use the promo code DACE at checkout for the discount at jace.com. Also want to let you know, if you are in the Nashville area, I'm coming your way this weekend. I'm going to be speaking at the Reagan Day dinner for the Cheatham County GOP. That is this Saturday night in the Nashville area. I'll be speaking for the Reagan dinner at the Cheatham County GOP. You can get tickets on Eventbrite. There's a link up on my X page right now at Steve Deace Show if you just want to go there and click on that. And feel free to come by and say hello. I hope to see at least a few of you there. Always look forward to every opportunity I have to get down to the Nashville area. It's one of my favorite places. I love Tennessee. So hope to see some of you down there, where I will be speaking hopefully better than I just was. Hope to see some of you down there at the Reagan Day dinner coming up this Saturday. Tickets, that's for Cheatham County. Tickets are available on Eventbrite, or just go to my Twitter feed at Steve Deace Show, and you'll see the Eventbrite link right there towards the top of my feed. All right, coming up on today's show, you've heard of the 1619 Project, a historic revisionist scam that the left tried to roll out a few years ago. Well, Seth Gruber has a new film coming out called The 1916 Project, where he traces it back to the events of this era, much of the evil and rot gut that is infesting our culture today. I've seen the movie. It's fantastic. And we'll let Seth give you a preview of that coming up at the bottom of the hour. We've got a little mixture of both fake news or not, or idolatry or not, coming up next hour, because it's getting harder to tell the difference between the two, and we will tackle that for you in the next hour of the program. And then Matt Walsh has done it again. It's hard to live up to the bar set by What's a Woman. All right, I've said for the last couple of years, I really believe What's a Woman ranks up there with God and Man at Yale, The Way Things Ought to Be, as some of the greatest singular pieces of visionary content that modern conservatism, the modern right, has ever produced. So to say it's not as good as Gone with the Wind. Hey, it's not Titanic. Hey, it's not Star Wars. Okay. Hey, it's not The Godfather. It's not. But Am I Racist is a worthy sequel in its own right, and very well done. I laughed out loud several times. It's impossible to give this movie an adequate review without any spoilers. So you've been warned, and that is coming up on the final segment of the show today during Pop Culture Tuesday. Big move, too, for the Daily Wire. This is their first wide theatrical release, and they've been primarily producing original content behind their own banner on their website exclusively, and now they're going to try to get into the theatrical arena. I know a little bit about how tough that sledding can be, and so we'll get into some of that as well, and why do that with a movie like this. And it comes down to, ultimately, is your primary vector here profitable or being profitable? So we'll talk more about that coming up in the next hour of the show, too. But before we get there, let's hit it with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by more on the latest Trump assassination attempt. So far, would-be Trump assassin number 2, Ryan Routh, has only been charged with gun crimes in connection with the attempt on Donald Trump's life on Sunday. He was charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. We know, thanks to cell phone data from Routh gathered by authorities, that he had been camped out in a wooded area near the Trump National Golf Course with a loaded SKS-style rifle for 12 hours before he was spotted. It raises new questions, of course, about whether the Secret Service was doing enough to protect a politician who'd already survived one assassination attempt. The Blaze's Julio Rosas is in Florida right now, along with acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe. Rosas was able to track him down and ask,
excuse me, Director of Blaze Media. Just wondering, how many attempted assassinations President Trump have to go through in order for things at the agency to change? Sir, you can go past. That's fine. That's fine. I'm just wondering, so how many attempted assassinations does President Trump have to go through for drastic change that the agency is made? No comment on that, sir?
Just one day after the latest assassination attempt, ex-Secretary of State and Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton went on MSNBC with Rachel Maddow and said, "Hold my Xanax."
I don't understand why it's so difficult for the press to have a consistent narrative about how dangerous Trump is. The late, great journalist Harry Evans one time said that, journalists should, really try to achieve objectivity. And by that, he said, I mean, they should cover the object. Well, the object in this case is Donald Trump, his demagoguery, his danger to our country and the world, and stick with it.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is, that's a really weird way of saying don't miss next time.
这是一种非常奇怪的表达下次不要错过的方式.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says this morning he doesn't believe the federal government has full jurisdiction over this investigation and has assigned the case to Attorney General Ashley Moody.
The suspect, Ryan Routh, is believed to have committed state law violations across multiple judicial circuits in the state. The state of Florida has jurisdiction over the most serious, straightforward offense, which is attempted murder. In my judgment, it's not in the best interest of our state or our nation to have the same federal agencies that are seeking to prosecute Donald Trump leading this investigation, especially when the most serious, straightforward offense constitutes a violation of state law, but not federal law.
Moving on, and lost in the milieu of the latest attempt on Donald Trump's life is the interview or debate Dana Bash of CNN had with GOP VP hopeful J.D. Vance. It was less of a debate, actually, and more of an attempt to struggle session for Dana Bash as she attempted to fact-check J.D. Vance's Senate constituents in his own home state over their claims about Haitians overrunning Springfield. That was bad enough, then Bash made this astounding claim live on air.
You're not just a bystander, you're the senator from Ohio. So instead of saying things that are wrong and actually causing the hospitals, the schools, the government buildings to be evacuated because of bomb threats, because of the cats and dogs thing, why not actually be constructive in helping to better integrate them into the community?
I want to start with something you said, which I think is frankly disgusting and is more appropriate for a Democratic propagandist than it is for an American journalist. There is nothing that I have said that has led to threats against these hospitals. These hospitals, the bomb threats and so forth, it's disgusting. The violence is disgusting. We condemn it. We condemn all violence.
Senator, this happened after you and President Trump were on the debate stage, said that cats and dogs were being eaten.
Yeah, it turns out all these bomb threats the media and Democrats have been reporting ad nauseum for the past 72 or so hours are all hoaxes. Here's Ohio Governor Mike DeWine.
At least 33 separate bomb threats, each one of whom has been found as a hoax. So 33 threats, 33 hoax. These hoaxes have these threats have all been hoaxes. None of them have panned out. We have people, unfortunately, overseas who are taking these actions.
Also lost in the chaos of the Trump assassination attempt was this interview Kamala did with a local news station in Philadelphia.
When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are one or two specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard.
Tim Walz, your thoughts?
I hear from a lot of people, I just want my gas and my groceries to be cheaper. What is your administration's plan to be more specific a little bit on lowering the cost of living and lowering prices?
We're producing more oil than we ever have in this country. We are producing more than any other country. We're expanding those options for it, whether it's wind, it's solar, and things, getting at this heart of climate change.
Over in the Middle East, it appears Israel's Mossad blew the literal testicles off a bunch of Hezbollah terrorists today. More than 1,000 people, including Hezbollah fighters and medics, were wounded or dead when the pagers they used to communicate, yes, apparently they still use pagers, they exploded in their pockets across Lebanon. Israel has yet to comment on the story. Included in the casualties is reportedly Iran's ambassador to Lebanon. And that's what happened while we were away.
All right, Aaron's Montage is brought to you by our friends over at Hillsdale College. And if you are looking for all the more resources to help you become the informed citizenry that our founders said was a primary check and balance against tyranny. That's why they gave us the First Amendment in the first place. That's why you want to check out the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. It's one of the many ways that our friends at Hillsdale are defending liberty on the battlefield of education. Check out the Larry Arnn Show, the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, the Online Courses Podcast. All of these are top-notch. They're available on all your top podcast platforms. They'll be, we hope, your second favorite podcast after us. You can find your new second favorite when you go to daceforhillsdale.com. daceforhillsdale.com is where you want to go. Again, head over to daceforhillsdale.com. I want to go back to something I said yesterday about the threat that Trump represents, that he could be a herald or a forerunner. And I think one of the things that I have, as I said on the show yesterday, one of the things I've struggled with in this Trump era, and I've had every position on Donald Trump from the right you could have without going insane, I have had at some point. I've been Jonah Goldberg, okay? I've been Jack Posobiec, and all points in between. I've had every position, okay? I'm never voting for that guy. To, man, I'm out here working harder for him than he is. Okay. I'm like, that guy can never be president. To, we got to save this guy's presidency. I've had every position. And I thought, otherwise I wouldn't have acted on those things. I thought I had evidence and data to support the position I took at each of those times. You know, and there is a thing on the right that we have that's a phrase that's been coined more often, particularly by the Trump folks, of losing the plot. I do think in this case I lost the plot. I'm not sure I lost it in the way that they thought. I don't think it's that. And this is because this is why we still have a not insignificant portion of our own base. And when I say not insignificant, it might be 2, might be 3, might be 5%, but we need that 2, 3, 5% of our own base that is still like, I can't vote for this guy again. He screwed up here, did this, can't handle this. I'm just done. Okay. If the plot is that, he is a signature savior for America, that may be true. I don't know. But I do know that it pits a lot of varying groups of people against one another. I definitely think, especially because, let's face it, he has made some serious policy mistakes in his past. Some serious personnel mistakes in his past. But if you understand and see what I talked about yesterday, that he is a sentinel, that he is not the singular figure of a movement. He is the sentinel, the vanguard, all right, the forerunner of something else that is coming. And that's why, especially when you're dealing with people who love aborting things, this movement's got to get aborted right now, because if you're thinking the way they are, it'll be a lot easier to aboard a movement helmed by a guy who gets up on a Sunday morning and says, I hate the most popular woman in America, Taylor Swift, in all caps, right when you're trying to deal with a gender gap. All right? You're thinking if you're the enemy, he has advantages too. I mean, they keep trying to kill this guy. They keep trying to bankrupt this guy. They keep trying to imprison this guy. And the dude's got, it's the Donald Pleasance rant about Michael Myers and Halloween cannot be killed, cannot be stopped. All right. So clearly Donald Trump brings some advantages to the table too, but you're probably thinking to yourself, if you're on the other side, that there's enough sloppiness there, gray area there, Icarus impersonations there where we get too close to the sun just because. YOLO. Okay. We're better off trying to take this guy out and snuff this movement that he represents, that he's a vanguard of now, before something comes after him that is way more buttoned down. And in Aaron's montage, man, you saw like pillars of what that looks like in the clip there from J.D. Vance and Ron DeSantis. I mean, the ability that Vance had there to, in a very Trumpian way, just insult them right to their face and not take it right to their face. But did you notice there wasn't any of you're a fat, disgusting pig? Anything that they could squirrel, let me glom onto that so I don't have to get into the substance of what your argument is. He didn't do that. The level of messaging discipline from J.D. Vance, man, I mean, especially when you consider this guy's been a senator for half a term, the level of polish and discipline from a messaging standpoint is prodigy-like. I mean, this is machine-like. It's just darned impressive. And he's unflappable, does not take the bait. I mean, it's machine-like I just said. It's like we created an AI of right-wing messaging and got it on cable news channels. That's what J.D. Vance is. And you can see there's nothing in that clip where they're going to be like, we got him, something we can roll out with later. That's why they have to just bury it. They have to just bury it. And he reduces them to be the ones now acting out. He reduces them now to be the ones causing them and incites them now to be the douchebags. If you're an average normie and you saw that clip, you're just like, man, I can't freaking stand Dana Bash. That's why I don't watch any cable news. Hate them all. Back to my, private Idaho. And you cannot take for granted the difficulty of being able to engage in that level of conflict in the arena without a splatter effect, without collateral damage that gets back on you. And that is frankly something that Donald Trump has just not been able to do for the last 9 years. And this is why we're always in a rearguard action. We're always trying to convince people who should be voting for us to do so. We're always convincing people to not be exasperated, I should say in English, by personas and focus on policies. But what would it look like if Trump were 30 years younger and had more self-discipline and restraint? It would look like J.D. Vance. That's what it would look like. And he just crushes all of these interviews. And then you look at the other pillar here in DeSantis. The willingness to use, as we've seen throughout his tenure, but the willingness to wield power. To understand if Vance's messaging capabilities is the path is sort of a pathway or a framework for us to emulate moving forward as a movement about how to acquire power. What Ron DeSantis has done in office and continues to do in office in Florida is the playbook for what to do once power is acquired. They just don't miss anything. Anything they think they can do, they do. I mean, the talking point of we're going to trust the DOJ and FBI, who's been prosecuting Trump for the last 5 years, we're going to trust them to do this investigation unilaterally. devastating talking point. But not in a Vance way. But what Vance is doing is he's pushing back on a narrative in the arena of ideas. That is a devastating talking point in order to justify the power you are about to wield. And that is the kind of talking point that justifies the action you're about to commit. And I've mentioned this before. You know, I used to be a huge JFK assassination buff when I was a kid. And, you know, some of all those Jim Marrs books and all that kind of stuff, and how many times I saw Oliver Stone's movie and everything else, some of that hardwiring, it still sits there in the subconscious. And we look at the Zapruder film today and just kind of laugh that anybody believes the Warren Commission's magic bullet theory. I mean, there's everything. The only thing that the Zapruder film doesn't pick up is the vapor trail of the shot coming from the front to kill JFK. But you have to keep in mind that the public, JFK is assassinated November 22nd, 1963. The public does not see the live action. They saw some photos in Life magazine a few years later, but they do not see the live action in real time Zapruder film until 1969. And this is 2 presidents later. LBJ's been president, did not run again. Nixon is president now. So we've gone through multiple different political cycles now, all the unrest of the 60s, before the public actually sees in real time the Zapruder film. How did they see it? They saw it because a DA in New Orleans named Jim Garrison used and exercised the power that he had on a municipality level to subpoena it and force it to be seen in his trial that generated a lot of fanfare at that time. And that was the first time that the American people en masse saw in real time the Zapruder film roll out. And the fallout of that over the next decade prompted another House Select Committee on Assassinations to launch investigating JFK's assassination, which came back still saying that Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK, but no longer that he acted alone, but it was part of a conspiracy. That probably never happens if that local official there in Jim Garrison does not use the power that he has to make the Zapruder film public. Probably never happens. And what we've seen Ron DeSantis do as governor on multiple fronts in immigration, he took the power that he could wield and used it to ship those illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard, change the debate. He took the last midterm election. So it appears, I just got a text, and now Mike Johnson is going to fight now. Yeah. That they are going to link the CR to. All right, so a contact I have that knows the speaker sent me a text a few minutes ago. They are going to fight now. All right, so they're on the SAVE Act and link that with the funding bill. Good. That's the first time I've said that about Mike Johnson since he's been speaker. That's good. But even this anemic majority that we have right now on the right doesn't happen if Ron DeSantis doesn't reject the weak redistricting map that his own GOP legislature gave him and call him back and force him to do it again. That and Lee Zeldin overperforming in the New York gubernatorial race in a few districts is why you even have the anemic GOP majority you have right now, and they just haven't been able to totally run us over the last 4 years. COVID, save the best for last. I mean, just last week, Joe Ladapo, his Surgeon General, put out a notice saying, nobody take these COVID vaccines. I don't care who you are. Don't take any of them this cold and flu season. Don't touch those things. They're toxic. That is still the only public health department in the entire country telling any element of truth about these toxic genetic serums. Still the only one. And now he's going to interpose the office of his attorney general up against the federal Leviathan to get us some answers on some of this. How is this possible? This guy was able just to camp out there. And did you see him link this to the Vegas shooting too? In his press conference today, he did that. Said, hey, it's been how many years since the worst mass shooting in American history in Vegas? We still have no answers, nothing. That stuff's not happening in Florida. We're not doing that here. Moving forward, we can't help it. We're a species and that, focuses on personalities to some degree. God did give us a creation based on headship, so who we put it as the head of things does matter, okay? And moving forward, whether Trump wins or loses, I am sure lots of people are going to, on our side, are going to go after each other on the basis of whether they're going to back Ron DeSantis or J.D. Vance if we're fortunate enough to even have a 2028 election. In the GOP primary that round. And, I'm kind of exhausted with that whole thing myself. I'm sure I'll get dragged into it because I live in Iowa to some degree against my own better judgment at this point. But forget the names for a second. Because if you're a DeSantis 28 guy, you're disgusted that I just talked about how great JD was. And if you're a JD 28 guy, you're like, you're never going to get it, Dace. MAGA's in control and DeSantis is a globalist cuck now. I don't care about any of that. I'm worried. I'm concerned about the name on the front of the jersey, not the back. And those two guys, regardless of what you think of them individually, where you want them to be in the post-Trumpian pecking order, whether that starts November 6th, or January of next year, because Trump's a one-termer even if he wins. So this palace intrigue is going to start up right away. Regardless of what order you want them in, they are, to me, they are the frameworks. They are the symbols of what we can do moving forward. And actually, I would go so far as to say what we have to do moving forward. It's just not going to be good enough now. If you cannot do some level in your own way, maybe you could be better at it. Maybe you'll have be a more winsome than he is, maybe less, maybe more stern, whatever your way is. But if you cannot do what J.D. Vance is doing in this messaging battle, then you're just out of time. You're useless, really, as the face of our side. And then once you're elected, if you're not willing to utilize the full gamut of power you have at your disposal the way Ron DeSantis is, then, we wasted time on you. These two guys, to me, what they are demonstrating right now in this particular moment is the typecast, gentlemen, of what the American right needs to be moving forward into the future for whatever future we actually have. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, complain about the federal government all you want. If you're any definition of conservative, your plate is full on that front. But you have to take care of your own backyard then. And that's what they're showing you. Again, J.D. Vance, you're not taking Springfield, Ohio over my dead body. Now, why doesn't everybody in Springfield feel that way? Why doesn't everybody in Ohio feel that way? Florida, same thing once again. Their sheriff speaking up accordingly lately. You can't, you really, if the federal government is frustrating, you have got to be the boots on the ground, making sure the local government is not just a proxy for the feds. And that's what's happening way too often.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. And Steve, I think we would be better served in this segment. We cannot let this entire thing go by without your thoughts on the testicles being exploded of Hezbollah members. Your thoughts?
If you don't like seeing the Israelis literally blow the balls off jihadists, then,
you're not American.
We're not your show. Yeah. You tuned into the wrong program. Okay. That's good living right there. That is good. That is good living right there. How can you not appreciate that? The symbolism of that too. Hell yeah. How can you not appreciate that? I'm in.
The Israelis
I'm fine with doing that daily.
Perform gender reassignment surgery on a bunch of terrorists.
Yes.
How's that for an Ow My Balls episode?
Just a blessing of liberty.
Yes. But to be serious for a second, the statement of given the amount of mass raping these people did to their women on October the 7th. I'm good with it. I'll allow it. So say we all. More in a moment. I'm dead serious what I just said a few minutes ago. By the way, if you're wondering, I'm wearing the shirt my buddy Mike Pike here in Iowa running for state senate, the exact kind of man that we need to be electing in state legislatures all over the country. So thought I'd rep him today on the program. But if you cannot appreciate the Israelis literally blowing the testicles off of the jihadists who rape their women, giving them the tranny surgeries they have wickedly earned, we are not the show for you. I mean, that's just, do you even Steve Deace show, bro? I mean, it's almost like I wish that op was named Deace. Operation Deace. Just literally gonna blow their balls off. Operation Deace, they got it coming. All right. But in all seriousness, though, what they need more in Israel than anything else is the gospel and Messiah. And that's why we are proud to partner with our friends over at Voice of Judah Israel. They are using humanitarian outreach to the Israelis, especially during this post-October 7th trying time, to minister to them. But the most important ministry that they do and believe in is the building of churches, teaching, spreading, discipling of the gospel, bringing the gospel back to the place that gave it to the rest of us all over the rest of the world. And if you want to be supportive of that effort, you can go to vojisrael.org/Steve. VOJ for Voice of Judah, vojisrael.org/Steve. You can learn more about their inspiring work there that they do to bring the gospel back home to the Holy Land, where, of course, it was given birth to us. And then you can be supportive of that as well. vojisrael.org/Steve. That's vojisrael.org/Steve. Well, you guys might remember a few years ago, the left tried to roll out with something called the 1619 Project, which was a clear attempt at revisionist history. I mean, Soviet level of revisionist history that was panned even by some respected intellectuals on the left. They were like, listen, guys, we're out here trying to, I'm at this university brainwashing these kids right now, but I mean, this is so sloppy. This is so ridiculous. I can't even possibly spin this. So that's got to go, right? But what about the 1916 Project? That is a new forthcoming film from Seth Gruber, who joins us now here on The Blaze. I've had a chance to see the movie. It is absolutely fantastic. And Seth, it's good to have you back on the show, brother. How are you?
Good, man. Yeah, just trying to remain rested while we're tearing down high places at the White Rose Resistance, helping the church find their chest again. And it's an honor to fight with you, brother.
You bet. Same here. So let's start with the premise of 1916. When you went down this road of putting this story together, did you just come up with 1916 because it was kind of a clever play on, 1619? Or did you actually look into it and then say, wow, that actually is a pivotal year? Or maybe it was a little bit of both?
It was a little bit of both. So early last year, we were at our creative writing retreat with my team, and I was expressing this idea that I was calling the high priests of humanism. Basically, all the kooky Keynesian, Sanger, Hugh Hefner, demoniac weirdos and cultural Marxists of the 20th century who architected today's stupid, insane, upside-down society. That was kind of the concept I was explaining. And my chief of staff went, it sounds like you're explaining the 1619 Project, but like as it should have been, like in a good way, like without the lies. Like you got to go back and to understand why we have such an evil culture today. And then I went, guys, Margaret Sanger opened her first clinic for what would turn into the best funded 501c3 in human history, Planned Parenthood, in 1916. And that's when I went, oh my gosh, this is providential. So it is a riff on the 1619 Project, but it's also a hilarious story behind how the disciples of the 1619 Project, Steve, got Planned Parenthood to cancel their own founder in the summer of 2020. Because if we're canceling everything that's racist, well, the revolution always eats its own. And in July of 2020, Planned Parenthood canceled Sanger, took her name off their flagship Manhattan clinic, and stopped giving out the Margaret Sanger Award. So take us back to that era and kind of this cauldron or bouillabaisse of ideologies that your movie talks about, that Margaret Sanger finds herself embroiled in. Because, on the surface, a lot of our audience would say, and we even say a lot on our show, the answers to the future are often found in the past. Or to quote from one of our favorite TV shows on this on our program, Lost, when Jack says, we have to go back.
right? Okay, but there's also a difference between tradition and nostalgia. Like the 50s, everybody looks at on the right as an idyllic time, and by comparison, it was also the era that gave us Kinsey and Hefner, who basically were the godfathers of the sexual revolution that is undoing us right now, right? And so you're going back 100 years to the turn of the 20th century, and a lot of people would just assume, we were more biblically literate, people went to church on a more regular basis, we were less urbanized, okay? So that should have been much more in line with our value system, and yet underneath the surface here is this cauldron/bouillabaisse of ideologies that give birth to the reimagining of America that we are now living through a century later.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit, Steve. That's very well said, by the way. So Hilaire Belloc, who was G.K. Chesterton's best friend, they were such good friends, people called them Chester Block. And Hilaire Belloc said, to comprehend the history of a thing is to unlock the mysteries of its present, but more to discover the profundities of its future. In other words, we don't study the past just to debate and tinker around with all the specifics of what happened then. We study the past to understand how that's still happening now. And if nothing changes, where this continues to go in the future if nothing changes, okay? So it is important to go back, except the Disciples of the 1619 Project was a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. But the concept of going back to understand today is actually very valid. And why did I hone in on 1916? Let me explain how dang important this is to your listeners, to the church in America, and to lay Americans who are not super religious, but they're not super left-wing weirdos. They're just kind of like common sense, leave me alone Americans. Here's why this is important. Planned Parenthood is the best funded 501c3 in human history. They're the largest abortion provider in the world. They're the largest provider, and by the way, this one they say on their own website, they're the largest provider of the pornographic comprehensive sexuality education in America's public schools, bringing angry mama bears and papa bears to school board meetings. And as of last year, about 1 year ago, Steve, they announced in a leaked memo that I got, and I cited in my book, The 1916 Project, that they are now the second largest provider of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for America's gender-confused youth. So the largest abortion provider in the world is now also the second largest provider of chemically castrating transgender drugs for America's gender-confused youth, which should, by the way, surprise absolutely no one, because Planned Parenthood didn't just come out of the eugenics movement, they were the eugenics movement. And what did every eugenicist freak weirdo believe? That you should sterilize a bunch of people because Mother Gaia is really angry at you because you're swarming and spawning, to quote Margaret Sanger, Steve, swarming and spawning. And Mother Gaia is really angry about that because of the population bomb and overpopulation. Oh, that's right. The guy who wrote the population bomb sat on the board of Planned Parenthood. Shocker. So that's what Planned Parenthood came out of. So if we're going to understand one of the most influential secular left-wing demonic organizations in America today, it makes sense to go back to that founder's first clinic. But Margaret Sanger didn't just emerge out of the earth with all these weird, crazy ideals. She herself was the product of secular left-wing discipleship, which the left has been doing far better than Christians have been doing to disciple the next generation into pure and undefiled religion. Her number one adulterer bedmate, if we can put it that way, Steve, one of the many men that she slept with and cheated on, including H.G. Wells and others, was a guy named Havelock Ellis. He was the Kinsey of England, Steve, a freaking weirdo. The guy hosted orgies in his homes. He forced his wife to watch him as he participated in these entanglements. He himself was impotent, so he was always pushing the boundaries of what would get him excited. That's the PG-13 version. Sanger began a raging affair with Havelock Ellis and referred to him as the most significant individual and mentor in her life. So if you want to understand Planned Parenthood, you should probably understand its founder. If you want to understand its founder, well, this is the man that she said was the most significant mentor and influence in her life. Guess who Havelock Ellis was mentored by, was pen pals with, Steve, who plotted on how to bring this pen pals ideology into Havelock Ellis's writings as he was raising up young men and women to take the gospel of sex to the ends of the earth. A certain guy named who coined the term eugenics, the cousin of Charles Darwin, okay, and who read his cousin's book, Origin of Species. It so changed his life that he credits the Origin of Species for inspiring him to launch the eugenics movement. and coined the stinking term. So if we're tracing secular discipleship that leads to Margaret Sanger, we went awfully quickly from man as a monkey and an animal to eugenics, obliterate the unfit, to sexual chaos, to child sacrifice, and the founding of an organization that has killed more innocent human beings than Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot combined.
So you use a term, I want to make sure I get it right in the movie, because you made me think of it again as you were talking about this, because, you know, there's dual DUAL aspects of Gnosticism, the original heresy, you know, post-ascension. Yep. And one, of course, is the idea of secret knowledges, secret, charms, incantations, formulas. That goes back to Genesis 3. You know, the enemy says to Adam and Eve, God's holding out on you. There's knowledge he doesn't want you to have.
Yeah,
but the other aspect of that is that your body is terrible. The physical world is bad. So you're welcome to do whatever you want with your body. There's no morality there. You can be a total and complete, anywhere from antinomian, to degradate if you want, because there's no moral standard there. What's the term? Was it cultural Gnosticism or something that you used in the film?
We called it occultic Gnosticism.
Occultic Gnosticism, yes.
Yeah, but I call it body self-dualism, Gnostic dualism, occultic Gnosticism. But it's a rebirth of an ancient Christian heresy that has been revived and resuscitated and brought back in the name of progress, and is the underlying animating feature of every new iteration of the culture of death today.
Final thing I want to talk to you about is, so your film goes back to 1916. Pardon me. That's when Margaret Sanger opens her first clinic. 40 years, about 40 years go by, basically an entire generation. And her ideas have not really taken root in the mainstream in America. There was a very popular film in 1950 called Cheaper by the Dozen. They remade it about 20 years ago with Dennis Quaid. But there's a scene in the original where Margaret Sanger knocks on the door of Irene Dunn, the mom, and says, hey, I'm here to talk to you, because the movie takes place in the early 20th century, this era you're talking about. She knocks on the door of Irene Dunn, the mom, and says, I'm here to talk to you about birth control. You've got too many kids. And Irene Dunn, this would blow your mind that this would happen in a movie today. Irene Dunn looks at her, slams the door in her face, and walks away, right? So, and a full generation has gone by, and her ideology has not taken root in the mainstream, not even in Hollywood Babylon yet. Okay. So what happened in the second generation then, Seth, that this is now the norm that we are up against?
Well, so things happen gradually, then suddenly, just like bankruptcy. And the left is relentless, Steve, aren't they? They are relentless. They're way more dogmatic and zealous for neo-pagan revivalism than the church in America is for pure and undefiled religion. What they've done is they've taken our strategy and they flipped it upside down, okay? And that's why it's so important, by the way, to remember that ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims. And when you see bad ideas raising their head, the church in America, and for our pastors, for goodness sake, Steve, should just call it false religion and preach against it, dude. Find some testicular fortitude, go find where you buried your balls in the backyard, reattach them, and start being a shepherd. Start preaching against false religion that masquerades as politics to keep the politically impotent pastors silent. Recognize that a shepherd sometimes has to pick up a staff, not just to guide those cute little sheep, but to bang wolves on the head, dude. Begin to contend against the culture of death and the spirit of the age and his acolytes that he raises up in this culture to be his disciples. There's a book that was due to be released in 1966 by Macmillan, by Carol Quigley, Steve. It was called Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Day. And Carol Quigley became the mentors of Bill and Hillary Clinton, and he was tracing what he called the history of the Anglo-American establishment, what he thought was this incredible history. And he traced its movement back to the ideas of Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci, who went afoul of Mussolini and spent the rest of his life in prison. That's right. And his letters became the blueprint for the creation and inspiration of the Frankfurt School before the German Jews moved the Frankfurt School to Columbia University because some of them feared Hitler. And that's where we get cultural Marxism and critical race theory from, by the way. One of the guys from the Frankfurt School was Herbert Marcuse, who mentored Angela Davis, who mentored Nicole Hannah-Jones, the author of the 1619 Project. Are you starting to see how secular discipleship works and why when you stand back and let bad ideas rest, they don't rest. They actually begin to move and infiltrate the society. So Carol Quigley was exposing how this strategy was to unfold in the major institutions of power, to alter the foundations of culture, Steve. He recognized that it was a battle of worldviews. Well, the left wasn't ready for this book to come out because he was exposing what Gramsci called the strategy of the robes, except he thought it was a good thing. Let's get the robes of the academia, the courts, the clergy, and the scientific organizations, and then we'll move onward with the revolution, but it won't have to happen with guns because we'll have changed the culture.
The long march to the institutions. Right. Yeah.
That's right. That's another word for it. Margaret Sanger probably implemented the strategy of the robes, Steve, better than anyone else in the 20th century, better than Hugh Hefner, better than Kinsey. Why? Because even Hefner and Kinsey couldn't have been who they were without Sanger. This woman wined and dined both sides of the political aisle, funding from both sides of the political aisle. That woman has changed our culture more than anyone else. If you want to go back and really see how this culture of death happened, you have to take it before abortions, because Margaret Sanger didn't begin to perform, or Planned Parenthood didn't begin to perform abortions until the late 60s, but they were a eugenics organization. And for Sanger, she said birth control, here's what she said, Steve, is not contraception thoughtlessly and indiscriminately practiced. It means the cultivation and release of the better racial elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks.
That's
those
Darwinism.
Human weeds.
That's Darwinism.
Weeds.
Yeah.
So that's
that's the descent of man. That's essentially Darwin's follow-up work. The descent of man is what she says right there. All right, we're short on time because you and I could do this another 3 hours. I want to make sure people know where they can see this movie and when. So I've got about a minute. Give them the details on that, Seth.
Yeah, you guys can go to the 1916project.com to host a screening at your church right now. It comes out this fall. It comes out very soon. The final date is being released very soon. But the 1916project.com, the book is the 1916project.com, The Lying, the Witch, and the War We're In. The Lying, the Witch, and the War We're In. So go pick up a book now. The book goes way, 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 way deeper than the film. The film's a 75-minute full-length documentary. We're pushing 1,000 churches to be screening it around the country, culminating in an event in June of 2025 that I want to invite you right now on your show to speak at, Steve. It's called The Last Stand. 10,000 people, Southern California, Jack Hibbs, John Cooper, Danny Gokey, Charlie Kirk, Eric Metaxas, Sally Beth Stuckey. Prayer, repentance, and mobilization. So go to the1916project.com, and thank you, Steve.
It's got to be the's got to be in there, right? Okay.
That's right.
All right, so make sure the is in there, folks. The1916project.com. The1916project.com. It's fantastic. Thank you, Seth. Always good to see you, brother. Appreciate it.
You too, brother. Thank you.
All right, we'll come back hour 2. You know, we changed fake news or not to idolatry or not, but it's getting harder to tell the difference between the two. We'll explain here next. We are back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget also, if you are a part of the podcast audience, and that means you're a big part of our audience, please leave us a 5-star review if you don't mind. Thank you to all of you who have. You can also make sure to hit subscribe or follow. If you're on iTunes, you hit follow these days, and that'll make sure that every time, if you click on those things, every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your podcast feed every single time. This part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Pure Health Research. They are concerned about a silent threat out there that is potentially affecting as many as 1 in 3 Americans, and it is an overworked and sluggish liver. That can affect your weight, your metabolism, your energy, clear thinking, productivity, even your sleep. It can also lead to heart problems. Our livers are getting bombed every single day between GMOs, microplastics, toxins, fluoride, and all the other stuff that you might not even know about. So if you are looking for something to do about it, check out the premium supplement designed with 11 clinically proven botanicals to support and detoxify your liver, helping you feel revitalized and ready to conquer each day. And it's a company that's already helped about 2 million people. All right. So here's an exclusive offer from Pure Health Research. You can try their liver health formula, and as a special offer, receive a free 1 month supply of nano-powered omega-3s with your order at if you try Liver Health Formula, when you go to getliverhelp.com/Steve, you can then claim your free gift there. All right. That's getliverhelp.com/Steve. That's where you can try it and get your free gift there at getliverhelp.com/Steve. All right, before we get to idolatry or not, guys, I just think, man, Seth Gruber packs a wallop when he comes on this show. I would be remiss if I did not give you guys a chance to react to what he said about his upcoming movie, the 1916 Project, which I have seen. It is fantastic. You can watch it, schedule your church for a screening at make sure the is in there, the1916project.com, the1916project.com. What did you guys think about what Seth had to say? Other than his obvious pandering to us by quoting from Chesterton, which is an obvious way to pander to the show. What do you guys think?
The sad, tragic truth is, for children of the 80s like you and I, Steve, when we thought consciously we were being raised and taught about our grandfathers and saving Western civilization in World War II, and then we rocked it and had a bunch of babies in the 50s, and we were still so cool that we threw a massive party in the 60s, and then still had our swagger and conquered communism in the 80s with Reagan. And while that's true, the far deeper truth is what he lays out here. Because if all of that informed us, mind, body, and soul, in who we are, what we want to be going forward. And that's what he was talking about, past, present, future. This country would look like a far, far different place right now. The real truth is we can talk about winning World War II. We could talk about defeating communism. But the victory is what happened to us underneath all of that, what unconsciously was controlling us all the way along. I think that's just undeniable at this point. We kind of were high on our own supply for way too long, and the enemy picked up on that. Steve wrote about that in Nefarious. That's what's behind the movie. He realized that he had us, and we are very close to him doing a victory dance that we can't recover from.
Indeed, and I remain a little mystified how we had not heard about Seth Gruber, at least I hadn't, before we had him on the first time, and his work at Clear Truth Media, and then with this project as well. Just one of the best, most effective communicators we've had on our show in quite some time. But it's laying out the just inescapable, unavoidable truth that what we are experiencing at a cultural level, and has been borne out now at the political, at the institutional level, was always, always the biggest lie, coming from the father of lies. And that lie, borne out by Margaret Sanger in the, going to invent a new word here, the intertwining, I guess maybe that is a real word, the intertwiningness of sexual ethic and abortion. It's always been one and the same. It's always been one and the same. And the question that underpins that, and the big lie that underpins that, is what is life really about? What is it really about? In our natural states, in our flesh, we want to say that life is purely about pleasure and whatever helps me to that end. In a regenerated state, we say that life is about living, actually living, and being fruitful and multiplying. We're seeing the bitter fruits, the rotten fruits of a country, of a civilization falling for the aforementioned former lie. And it's borne out in everything that we see. Buying the lie that life is really just about pleasure in whatever attempt to attain that pleasure. You see that borne out everywhere. It is the answer to why we are here. It's no secret cabal of people pulling the strings. It's about the individual making that choice and believing that lie. And eventually, when enough people believe for that lie and fall for that lie, you have a civilizational collapse, which is what we're seeing right now.
That is a great segue to where I want to go next. And we made, was it this year or last year, guys? We made the decision to switch up fake news or not to idolatry or not. But it's getting harder to tell which is which, as it becomes more and more obvious that what we're, to borrow Aaron's term, intertwined with is a spiritual war. I mean, spiritual warfare from the unseen realm is just spilling out now in obvious ways into the realm we experience and see on a regular basis. Back in June, before their one and only debate, acting President Joe Biden, because he's not actually running the country, acting President Joe Biden tweeted out, and I quote, "Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He is a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for." Since acting President Joe Biden posted that on X, there have now been 2 different assassination attempts on Donald Trump. 2, since he posted this. But this isn't even an outlier, unfortunately. The folks over at Grabien, who do a great job aggregating content from all over the media sphere, they put together this montage of the left inciting, calling for, advocating, blessing, smirking, winking, and nodding at political violence. Watch this.
What do? You make it to the general, you're on the debate stage. He starts making fun of your age, your mental state. I
said, come on, Donald. Come on, man. Press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school, I could take him behind the gym. I'm looking forward to this, man. You walk behind me in a debate. Come here, man. They asked me, would I like to debate this gentleman? And I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. Or let's start a real physical revolution if you're talking about it. The idea that I'd be intimidated by Donald Trump, he's the bully used to make fun when I was a kid and stutter and I smacked him in the mouth.
Would you really fight the president, sir?
I was talking about high school. Go back and read what I said. How many push-ups you want to do here, pal? You want to check my shape on it? Let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Focus on this man, what he's doing, that no president has ever done. No president. Ask the right questions.
Why attack Sanders?
Why? You're getting nervous, man. You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack. Any guy who talked that way was usually the fattest, ugliest SOB in the room. You should be looking at Trump. Trump's doing this because he knows I'll beat him like a drum. I will beat him like a drum. I will beat him like a drum. I think the boy knows that I'll beat him like a drum. I hope I've demonstrated I can take a punch. And if I'm one nominee, he's going to understand what punches mean.
You're talking about taking on Donald Trump with fisticuffs behind the gym. So I brought something along for you that might be helpful to you in your new endeavor. A couple boxing gloves. These are worn boxing gloves.
Those are the most lighthearted examples of the kinds of stuff we've seen over the last numerous years, from Kathy Griffin holding his severed head to fever dreams of death. We have been subjected to this on a regular basis over the last 9 years. Even in Aaron's montage today, when he pointed out Hillary Clinton's rant after another assassination attempt at Trump, I mean, that's basically code for don't miss next time. Everyone from Biden to Kamala to little Soros expressing their relief that literally Hitler is still alive, expressing their joy, their gladness that the danger to democracy still lives. They're not serious about one of those things. They can't be serious about both of them at the same time. They can be unserious about the heated rhetoric against Trump. They can be unserious that he's still alive. But they can't be serious about both of those things at the same time. They can't be. They're not congruent. Unless this is a mass hallucinative version of bipolar that heretofore modern psychiatry has yet to prove exists. Which brings me to this tweet yesterday from the Cincinnati Enquirer. And for those of you that maybe don't even know what that is anymore, that's a newspaper, right? A newspaper, well, never mind. But they used to be very formidable in America. And I would typically actually look at the article and share the article with you to get the full context of what this tweet says. This is a tweet yesterday from the Cincinnati Enquirer, quote, "There is no place in politics for violence. That being said, the former president, Donald Trump, brings a lot of this on himself." That is the political version of, well, she dressed that way, so she has it coming. I mean, that's like saying, well, you know, if he would just stop opposing us and inspiring others to do the same, we'd stop trying to kill him. We're the real victims here. Now, in the past, when I thought that the social compact in America was still intact, I would go read the article itself and see if it lines up with the take in this tweet before I brought it to your attention. Here's why I'm not going to do that. 2 reasons. 1, the social compact has been severed. They're the ones that severed it. Like Kathy Griffin holding Trump's severed head. But then 2, I went and looked it up. I was actually still going to do that this morning. I was still, going to let me go read the piece. Trying to love my neighbors. I love myself here. Give some benefit of the doubt. But I thought before I do that, I'm going to go look something up. So I went and looked up, guys, the circulation for the Cincinnati Enquirer. The Cincinnati Enquirer's daily circulation is about 25,000. I mean, that's nothing. It's a nothing burger. Here's the thing. Aaron, I don't know what the number is right now. In fact, I guess I can click on it and look, see what's happened since this morning. All right. It's moved up a little bit, but that post on X is at over 1.3 million views. You see where I'm going with this? That even if the article and column itself has some kind of other context to it, that would come into the remote view of justifying that take, it will be seen by a scant percentage of the people who have seen their tweet. It's really not even close. So that's why we're going to address just the tweet. They got more traction. I'd be willing to bet, without even looking at their X feed, that is the most viewed piece of content the Cincinnati Enquirer has tweeted out this year so far. When you're dealing with a circulation of barely 25,000 people. How are we here? What is happening here? I thought there was a fantastic, I guess we'll call it an essay, that J.D. Vance posted on X this morning talking about what's going on with the media. I want to share it with you. I'm going to read it to you. Yesterday, Donald J. Trump nearly lost his life. An armed gunman waited for him in the bushes. He brought a GoPro camera to record it. A Secret Service agent spotted the barrel of a gun through a fence and shot at the gunman. The gunman fled. He was caught. And now we slowly learn about him and his motive. President Trump is my running mate and my friend, but he is more importantly a father and a grandfather to people who love him very much. I want him to have many more years with his family, and selfishly, I'd like many more with my own. I admire the president for calling for peace and calm. The rhetoric is out of control. It nearly got Steve Scalise and many others killed a few years ago. It nearly got Donald Trump now killed twice. But I want to say something about yesterday's news and how it illuminates the difference between vigorous debate and violent rhetoric. Here's what we know so far. Kamala Harris has said that, quote, democracy is on the line, end quote, in her race against Donald Trump. The gunman agreed and used the exact same phrase. He had a Kamala Harris bumper sticker on his truck. He was obsessed with Ukraine's fight for democracy and absorbed many unhinged views about the Russia-Ukraine war. His name is Ryan Routh, and he donated 19 times to Democrat causes and 0 to Republican ones. How do you think the Democrats and their media allies would respond if a 19-time Republican donor tried to kill a Democratic official? It's a question that answers itself. For years, Kamala Harris's campaign surrogates have said things like Trump has to be eliminated. And how have their media allies responded to the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump in as many months? NBC News called the attempted assassination a, quote, golf club incident. The LA Times told us, quote, Trump targeted at golf club. The USA Today's top of the fold headline is Hope in America, and they published a preposterous letter to the editor arguing that Trump brings these assassination attempts on himself. CNN's Dana Bash, who just yesterday bizarrely accused me of inciting a bomb threat, said today that Harris's campaign rhetoric didn't motivate Ralph, even though he echoed their rhetoric explicitly. PBS's Weekend Show perfectly illustrates the double standard for Kamala Harris's media friends. After spending 30 seconds on the second assassination attempt on President Trump, they then focused on the real danger, me and President Trump, who are, according to them, personally responsible for the bomb threats against Springfield. Of course, I repeatedly condemned those threats, and reports today suggest they came from a foreign country, not, as the media suggested, a deranged Trump fan. The double standard is breathtaking. Donald Trump and I are, by their account, directly responsible for bomb threats from foreign countries. Why? Because we had the audacity to repeat what residents told us about the problems in their town. Meanwhile, Harris's allies call for Trump to be eliminated as the media publishes arguments that he deserved to be shot. This seems like a double standard, but at a deep level, it is entirely consistent. Consider Springfield. Citizens are telling us that there are problems. These include the undeniable truths of higher car accidents, unaffordable housing, evictions of residents, overcrowded hospitals, overstressed schools, and rising rates of disease. They also include the infamous pet stories, which, again, multiple people have spoken about either on video or to me or my staff. Kamala Harris's first strategy was to ignore these people and their concerns. Yes, she had prevented the deportation of millions of illegal aliens, and some of them made their way to Springfield. But it was a small town with no voice. Some of the local leadership even loved the cheap labor. So the suffering of thousands of American citizens went ignored. Their next move with these stories is censorship. In Springfield, a psychopath, or our foreign government, calls in a bomb threat. So they blame that on Trump and me. The threat of violence is disgraceful, of course, yet the media seems to relish it. They cover a bomb threat, but not the rise in murders. They cover the threat, but not the HIV uptick. They cover the threat, not the schools overwhelmed with new kids who don't speak English. They cover the threat, not rising insurance rates or the car accidents that cause them. They cover the threat, not the failures of Kamala Harris's leadership. The purpose is not to tone down the rhetoric. If anything, covering the bomb threats gives whoever makes them exactly what he wants: attention. The purpose is distraction and shame. How dare you talk about the problems of Haitian migration in Springfield? You're endangering people simply by discussing the problems of Kamala Harris's policies. It's a form of moral blackmail. Oh, that's good. Designed not to make anyone safe, but to shut everyone up. That's even better. Springfield is the most recent but hardly most egregious example. There was the Hunter Biden laptop story censored by big tech. And who can forget that anyone who didn't support Kamala Harris's Ukraine policy was drenched in the blood of Ukrainian children? That last one appears to have had some effect on Ralph, the most recent would-be assassin. The message is always the same. Don't you dare express an opinion on the public affairs of this nation. The message is, shut up. This is the difference between debate, even aggressive debate, and censorship. It is one thing to attack Kamala Harris for destroying the country and quite another to say President Trump should be eliminated. It is one thing to criticize overheated rhetoric and another to say that a former president has invited an assassination upon himself. It is one thing to say that Donald J. Trump's arguments about the election of 2020 are wrong. It is another thing to attempt to remove him from the ballot over it. It is one thing to say that pets are not, in fact, being eaten, and another thing to say that anyone who disagrees is trying to murder people. Dissent, even vigorous dissent, is a great tradition of the United States. Censorship is not. For the next 7 weeks of this campaign, I will vigorously defend your right to speak your mind. I believe you have every right to criticize me and Donald J. Trump, even if you say terrible or untrue things about us. But when I ask you to tone down the rhetoric, it's not about being nice. Our citizens have every right to be mean, even if I don't like it, or empty platitudes. Instead, I'm asking all of us to reject the censorship. Reject the idea that you can control what other people think and say. Embrace persuasion of your fellow citizens over silencing them, even through the powers, either through the powers of big tech or through moral blackmail. I think this will make our public debate much better, but there's something else. Reject censorship and you reject political violence. Embrace censorship and you will inevitably embrace violence on its behalf. The reason is simple. The logic of censorship leads directly to one place, for there is only one way to permanently silence a human being: put a bullet in his brain. I can't even add anything to that. And you guys know I'll try to add anything to just about anything. So Todd and Aaron, I'm going to turn this over to you. After everything I've laid out here in this segment, and get you guys' thoughts. What say you?
I indirectly commented on this on Twitter because somebody else came along and commented on what Hillary said, and I instantly connected the dots. That this isn't really an election right now because of everything JD said. This is a trial of the American people, is what this is. Will we or will we not accept this level of gaslighting? Because that's where we've got censorship at this level. It is pure gaslighting. It is utterly meant to drive us insane on some level, corporately, as a people, where we don't know up from down. Are we willing or not to truly be citizens? And to do the bare minimum, to roll up our sleeves and do the work of being a free people? Are we willing or not to really pray for revival via our works? Are we willing to smash the idols that we know are consuming us? Once again, I'll beat the drum all day long on this, but just yesterday I heard the local sports roads. They weren't reflecting on it in like oh my God, what have we done kind of way. They were just like, I was watching the football game and I'm seeing on Twitter that there's an assassination attempt and they're not breaking away. And he's like, that is the power of football. They were just like, love the smell of their own farts. Guys, JD Vance is, I can't imagine a more perfect message for our time. That was Sean Connery in The Untouchables. What are you prepared to do? And if the answer continues to be what we're prepared to do right now at this moment, guaranteed loser, no matter whether Trump wins or not. We all have a charge to keep, all of us. And being gaslit like this is, we're simply not victims in this. We are complicit in it. We are accomplices in it. We like it. We've got, what Aaron said about pleasure, comfort. We've just got stuff to do. Thank you, JD Vance, for that message. I hope people have ears to hear.
And that's what we're going to find out in about 48 days. Well, that's what we should find out in 48 days. It's probably going to be like 58 days or so by the time they find enough ballots in some pus-infested basement in Philadelphia. That's what we're going to find out, the answer to that question. Because ultimately, I want to reiterate what Todd just said, that this is not really a choice between Kamala and Donald Trump. This is the reason why I decided to support Donald Trump, not necessarily as an endorsement of him, the person, but to say, this is not how we live in this country. This is not how it's supposed to be. Dude's up there dodging bullets. He's dodged more bullets than Kamala Harris has answered questions in this campaign. That in and of itself should be a wake-up call to the American people. That should be a wake-up call. But this is a trial of the people. It really is. I get it. I understand. The only platform that the Democrat Party, the only platform that the commies have, is constant, unabated, and never-ending emotional blackmail on every issue. If you don't trans the kids, they're going to kill themselves. if you don't allow unfettered illegal immigration into Springfield, Ohio, or Whitewater, Wisconsin,
or Sylacauga, Alabama,
or Pennsylvania, Charleroi, Pennsylvania, I think it was, you're literally a terrorist. You're going to get people killed. Any issue. It's just constant, never-ending emotional blackmail. Any relationship, any relationship, not just marriages, but especially marriages, any relationship where there is any inkling of emotional blackmail, that is an abusive relationship. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the Democrat Party, that's all the relationship is. And if the American people do not just say no to that, congratulations. Here's your sign. Here's your stupid sign. Here's your civilizational suicide sign. It's a test of us more than it is a confirmation, an affirmation of Donald Trump and the antics and the mean tweets. It is, what kind of people are we?
Correct. Just like if you're taking any more of the genetic serum boosters, that's an intelligence test. What Todd and Aaron, I hear you guys saying, is this election is essentially a spiritual wellness check of the people. That's basically what it is. And another way to describe moral blackmail is accusatory. If you don't agree with me, you're this. If you have a different opinion, you're this. Those are accusations, right? I accuse you of being a racist. I accuse you of being a terrorist sympathizer. I accuse you of being a Putin lover. I accuse you of being a homophobe. I accuse you of being a misogynist. The idea of trying to bully you with accusations, which of course are like impossible to prove negatives or disprove negatives, as Rush used to say. When you think about a language bathed in accusations, is there a being out there that you can think of? That's his native tongue. That his name actually, in some iterations, are even translated as accuser. Does that ring a bell with anyone? Is that like, oh yeah. Nah, nothing comes to mind. Sorry. Got tied up there on that rabbit trail. We'll move on. All right, coming up next here on Pop Culture Tuesday, going to be impossible to have this conversation without some spoilers, so you've been warned. But even though it does not rise to the crescendo of What's a Woman, it is in and of itself a masterpiece. Am I racist? I'll have a review and we'll discuss for Pop Culture Tuesday here in a moment. Well, I've known the guys over at First Liberty for many, many years. My former boss, Ted Cruz, comes out of this group as well from back in the day, and they have been at the battlefront, at the front lines of the war that the left has waged against our way of life and the Constitution and the courts for many, many decades. They're now asking for you to enlist in that battle with them. It is very clear. Acting President Joe Biden has made this very clear. Numerous Democrat candidates for congressional office around the country have made this very clear. That their intent is to, quote, reform the Supreme Court. Well, Steve, you're the guy that led the fight to take out the justices. What's your problem with that? That's not what they intend to do. All right, they don't intend to put the court back in alignment with its constitutional parameters, but to just go ahead and shred whatever is left of the Constitution and therefore of normalcy within the courts that exist by stacking them, particularly the Supreme Court. All right, so if you want to get enlisted in this fight and maintain at least the hope one day of an independent judiciary, I mean, the left thinks an independent judiciary. This just goes to show right here what I'm about to tell you, why the social compact is broken and it's hard to share a country with this. The left's idea of an independent judiciary is a judiciary that is independent of the Constitution, independent of the people, and independent of the laws of nature and nature's God, and therefore free to just impose a new way of life without any electoral battle whatsoever. Our version of an independent judiciary goes back to the founding of the country, right? The most frequently cited grievance against King George III in the Declaration of Independence was the lack of an independent judiciary. Because under the British Crown, there were two branches of government, Parliament and the Court of King James. And Parliament at that time in history served at the discretion of the king as well, which means there was only one branch of government. No place to get to redress, no check and balance. And so an independent judiciary meant a judiciary that is independent of the other two issues to defend the God-given rights of the people. That's what it meant. Completely opposite view of what independent judiciary means between us and them. So if you want to enlist in this fight with our friends over at First Liberty, go to Supreme Coup, C-O-U-P, supremecoup.com/Steve. That's Supreme Coup, C-O-U-P, supremecoup.com/Steve. That's supremecoup.com/Steve. All right, let's get to Pop Culture Tuesday, where we look at the intersection between pop culture and conservatism. And of course, the number one thing that's trending in that space right now is Matt Walsh's latest film. And I think this is a worthwhile conversation on two fronts. The film in and of itself, and then what are, we're not frenemies. We're friends but competitors. So competitive friends, I don't, whatever the relationship is that we have with Daily Wire, okay, here at the place, because a lot of us know each other, but, we are vying for the same customers at the same time. So it's friendly, but it's competitive. Maybe I'll just go with that. This is a paradigm shift for them. And now taking their original content they've been producing the last few years behind their paywall there at Daily Wire, and now throwing it out there into the general population through wide theatrical release. In fact, Daily Wire is doing this through my friends over at Believe Entertainment, through their production, their release distribution company. So Believe Entertainment, that produced My Movie Nefarious, they have their own distribution group called SDG, Sola de Gloria, and that's who Daily Wire is using to distribute Matt's film in theaters across the country. So this is a big step into the mainstream for the American right, just from a distribution standpoint. But it's also a big step in terms of the content itself. So let's start there, guys. Have you guys seen the movie yet? Have you guys had a chance to see it?
No, have not.
No.
Aaron, okay. I'm going to try to avoid all-out spoilers. There is no way, and if you guys haven't seen it yet in the audience, I'm sorry, there is no way to adequately review this film other than saying it's pretty good without spoilers. It just can't be done. All right, so I'm going to do my best to limit them. But if you want to just, if you're like, hey, I'm seeing it tonight, man. Okay, if that's you, or tomorrow, and you're like, you'll come back and listen to this later. I'm going to give you to the count of 3, and then you've been warned. All right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, you've been warned. The film is modeled a lot like What's a Woman? And I got it, which means, Matt puts himself into ironically and funny situations. But in this case, it's even more direct than it was in the first film. I think when you watch the first film, What's a Woman, it almost seems as if this was just the organic reaction to the incredulous and nonsensical and wicked things the people he's interviewing are saying about gender. In this case, Matt actually seeks these people out. He goes to their support groups. He goes on their TV shows with that ridiculous wig. The Babylon Bee headline, Daily Wire is hoping that What's a Woman's a hit in theater so they can afford a better wig for Matt Walsh. Not far from the truth, frankly. All right. But in this case, this is more intentional now. Like the one kind of intentional moment. There's other humorous moments in What's a Woman, and you guys know I think What's a Woman's a masterpiece. But the one intentional moment is when he goes to Africa to interview that tribe. And how crazy they just think these, left-wing whites in the West are. This film is full of those moments. This film goes for the laughs directly. And I laughed out loud several times, by the way. I will tell you this, though. There were numerous times my wife and I had to cover our faces and look away because the amount of cringe that is being exposed, like I felt uncomfortable, guys. And it takes a lot for that to happen to me. You feel uncomfortable being in the presence of this kind of stuff. I mean, it's funny, but it's unholy. Yeah, I'm going to use that word. It's unholy. Like imagine you viewed something that lustfully appeals to your eyes. And therefore, because of that, you can't look away. The temptation is too strong. But then imagine you're like in the third ring of hell, and you're in the middle of a Clive Barker novel, and you're watching. Just now, the intent here isn't to lustfully tempt you. It's degradation. To paraphrase what Todd says about the lie is the point. Degradation is the point, right? She's not just scantily and seductively removing her clothing, but you are watching a woman just be defiled and degraded. You'd look away. I mean, it's unholy. At least I hope you would. If not, you're a sociopath. And there's a lot of sociopaths in this film. I mean, like there were moments I tried to watch. I could not do it. Reflexively, I couldn't do it. I had to cover my face, look away. I mean, the amount of cringe when this worldview is fully and nakedly exposed. And I mean, I'm pretty calloused, man. I do this for a living. I mean, I sit through Aaron's Bleep Lord Nefarious Says every week. Okay. And I'm like, I can't, man. I got to tap out. I can't do this. That happened several times. One of the best things the movie does is also point out how much money is to be made. And it itemizes dollar amounts. How much affluent suburban white people are willing to pay to be flogged, particularly the women, all in search of an absolution that is never forthcoming because the language is all accusatory, as we were just discussing. You cannot repent enough. You cannot atone enough. In fact, there is no atonement. There's nothing. There's just accusation. The best you can do is to hope to one day elevate yourself in their pyramid scheme to the point of being one of the accusers. But that's the closest to salvation you ever find in this religion. The best moment, I won't spoil all of it because you need to see it in context. But Matt convinces in his interview with Robin DiAngelo, he convinces her in joining him in paying reparations to a black staff member that he has behind the camera, that he brings out from behind the camera onto the set during the interview. And Matt basically says to Robin DiAngelo, the author of White Fragility, how many millions of copies has that sold? How many millions has she made? You know, you've moved me so much to, you know, how guilty I am and responsible I am for my friend's suffering here. I'm going to empty out my wallet and just, you know, give him money as reparations. The best I can do. I'm not rich. And he invites her to do the same. She doesn't. She goes into gets up and goes into her purse. And guys, the amount of money she pulls out, you laugh at first because of how many millions this broad has made selling this pseudoscience pagan filth. And you're like, the best she can do is $30. But the symbolism there. One might even say she pulled out 30 pieces of silver and handed that over as payment. It does not reach the crescendo of what's a woman. But that's a little bit like saying Rush Limbaugh's "See, I Told You So" was a disappointment because it wasn't the way things ought to be. That is still a tremendous book. And this is still a tremendous film. And I would highly recommend it. It is exceedingly well done. How Matt keeps a straight face through all of this, I will never understand. There's no way I could ever do it. No possible way. No way. Could not handle it. But he does. And it's masterful. You guys have any thoughts on what I just shared?
Well, he's a busy guy, but you'll get to ask him directly next week because I think I've got him booked for the show next week. This is what I'm talking about, the gaslighting. To just have this out there in common knowledge. And again, one of my great questions is how does he get these people to agree in the first place to all this? We think Matt Walsh is ubiquitous, but apparently he isn't, even amongst the people that ostensibly hate him the most. But this is an antidote to the gaslighting. This is a real. If you want Todd Erzin to advocate for a vaccine, this right here, inject this right into your veins, because we are in a stupor that allows us. She's just laugh track all you want. She's legion. She's absolutely legion. All manner of people have succumbed to the fact, and certainly the women, but the men who are by their side and say, "I'll check any box you want to, just as long as I can be left alone." They're all crackheads along these lines, and we need the antidote, and Matt Walsh has it.
Yeah, not even having seen the movie, I'm simultaneously amused and incensed. Because on the one hand, what do you make of an opponent that is seemingly so either dumb or full of hubris that they don't know who Matt Walsh is? They are eager to spew and display their fake virtue, that they don't even consider, at least not fully for a moment, that this could be a trap. That is amusing. It's also incensing because we're losing to these fools. Losing to them. I pray that everybody, I think it was a 1,300, 1,500 theatrical release. It was over 1,000 theaters, if I remember correctly. I pray that every single person who goes to the theater and watches this movie realizes that, no, this is not like going to see Avengers. There's not a brick wall when I exit the theater between the themes highlighted in this work and what's true in the real world. I mean, it's a documentary after all. I hope that lands with people. I hope it's not just, this is a great product, this is a great film. If you want to attribute some of the disintegration of DEI practices and other such things, kind of the gender, there is some signs, I think, that at least in public spheres with corporations, the gender stuff is kind of starting to, we're going to start to kind of Homer Simpson Bushes this thing. If you want to attribute that to what is a woman, I hope this is the death knell for the DEI movement somewhere, somehow, in not only the public institutions, but the private ones of this country as well. I think, and I hope that it just becomes, again, the greatest tool that we have is mockery of the devil. I hope this becomes, man, when I show up to the golf course with my corporate buddies, and they're talking about this, I don't want to be associated with DEI because it's just such a laughingstock. I hope that is one of the outcomes of this. So I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it.
The film nails that. What you just said in terms of the mockery of the devil, nails it. I mean, you know, as we've said on our show many times, what the devil hates the most to be mocked. Usually considered associated with it's an Irish Catholic saying, or Sir Thomas More, whoever you want to attribute it to. This film nails that in spades. Before we get out here, a word about our friends over at Focus on the Family. If you're looking for some practically applicable tips for how to stay on the narrow road in your marriage and in your parenting, Focus on the Family has been providing that resource for decades now. And now they're doing it through Jim Daly's podcast as well. Which is biblically sound advice that is relatable, interesting, and most importantly, also achievable and accessible. All right. So if you want to check it out for yourself, go to Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, DALY. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com, and you can start making a difference in your family's life today if you do that. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. Again, that is FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. Pardon me, Aaron, with the delay. I thought you were done. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no,
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
Not really. I can't wait to see this movie. I mean, I watched What Is a Woman like 2 or 3 different times, watching it with different people who I wanted to share it with. And not only from an entertainment standpoint, I hope that works like this can be a model of something that's not only entertaining, but also informing and actionable. That's kind of what we've tried to do on this show. Are we entertainment? Yes. But does it stop there? No, it shouldn't be. And we're not doing our jobs if it's just merely entertainment and nothing more. There's all sorts of places you can go to get that type of content. So I hope it's actionable as well.
And this is a big step for Daily Wire and for the entire right, by the way, doing a wide theatrical release with a film like this. So that could also speak volumes about our ability to influence the culture, moving forward with this film, and Matt's proven successful brand is kind of a test subject. We're going to stick around and do overtime for our subscribers. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow. Until then, Romans 8:28.